microwave sickness in the literature. So, a lot of people call it electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or they're electrosensitive, but in a lot of the literature, you have to look up microwave sickness and look up the history of that. And then you'll find these references to when storms come, when solar flares are active, people are getting more and more symptoms. Depression is a huge thing that happening around.
Yeah, I think the summary of that is that these natural exposures appear to have some influence on our biology. So it wouldn't be too hard to imagine that when we enhance and increase and radically and exponentially increase these exposures through man-made methods, that there would be some biological consequences.
Yeah, definitely. Furstenberg's book, he also talks about how in the beginning they actually were experimenting on people, giving them like some kind of thrill from slightly electrocuting them. And then the symptoms
in the 18th century, yeah.
Yeah. And then the symptoms that come later are a lot of these flu symptoms and things like that as well. So, and on this low level, we're all surrounded by this 50 or 60 hertz electricity that's pulsing us all the time. And that's actually modulated at 50 or 60 hertz. And so we're always pulsing at that if we don't live or sleep in a shielded space. And then we also have all of the RF, whether it's an analog RF signal from a radio station or a pulsed RF signal, doesn't matter. You still have the modulation happening at the 50 or 60 hertz. And a lot of times I wonder, okay, what would a real study look like if you have the 50, 60 hertz modulation and the RF and everything? Because usually in a lot of these studies, they're just testing one thing in a controlled environment. They're never testing the entire soup that we're constantly bathed in as human beings. We're the big experiment here, and they're just testing one thing at a time in this Western medicine type of fashion with all these studies that they're doing. They're really good at prescribing, but not so good at navigating the side effects and the physiological effects that are happening, especially when it comes to this contagion that we're being influxed in with that they don't know much about the mechanisms behind it and the interactions with the different drugs that they're prescribing people. And there's a lot of people a lot of doctors in the clinical setting that are in the field saying, I noticed this pattern, and these people were on ibuprofen that were younger that passed away. And then and then all the media jumps on that and they say, oh, well, there's no studies that are showing this, but we have clinical evidence from doctors in the field that are showing this very thing. Like, when did that become not valuable? That's always been something that's valuable. In my understanding, is when a doctor's finding something, especially amidst a pandemic, when things are so important to move fast and try to understand things better, you need to be listening to those people that are in the field treating patients.
Yeah, case reports.
So, I mean, when we're talking about the voltage gated calcium ion channels, the calcium influx into the cell, it's, the nitric oxide pathway. If you have EMF exposure and there's superoxide there and nitric oxide, it's going to use that up to create the peroxynitrite. And so there's no more nitric oxide present to defend you against the virus, is how I'm understanding it. And, that if we have this chronic exposure, it's also raising your stress levels, your cortisol. I've seen it in real time, in real life, actually, like, raise people's stress levels. And anytime that happens, it suppresses your immune system because you're trying to deal with this other stressor that's present, and your body is still trying to figure out how to do that. And so when we are exposed to EMF, even on a basic level, if you don't know much about this, you're just watching this for the coronavirus, just thinking about the way that electricity impacts the body and contracts your muscles, it can cause muscle contraction, it makes you lose magnesium, and your calcium contracts your muscles. So when that happens, it can raise your cortisol levels, and your cortisol is your stress hormones. So any rise in stress suppresses the immune system. when it's a bad type of stress that your body is perceiving. And so, that's just more fuel but the stress levels of the people, it's just, I never thought that television could have so much control.
Well, they thought about it. As I replied earlier, I refer as many do as the planned-demic. That they're using this as an opportunity for creating fear and implementing more totalitarian regimes and depriving us of our personal liberties and freedom in an effort, to collapse the economy, to acquire the assets and the wealth of the country. So it's a sad and tragic event that's happening, and the fear that's resulting is, I'm convinced, is going to cause more physiological damage and consequences than the viral infection ever would, because they will have permanent immunity.
Right. Unlike
the vaccine, which is being fast-tracked and abandoning all safety precautions to the wind. And if they get this thing implemented, I'm sure will cause enormous disabilities and premature deaths as a result of implementing this. There's just no way around it, because they're dropping all caution to the wind. So the best way to do that is to stay healthy and get exposed to the infection, like we used to do when I was growing up. We had chickenpox parties, and the parents would bring all the kids over, and everyone would get infected, and then you'd be immunized for the rest of your life.
Yep. Yeah. And when this is all over, the new narrative is going to be, well, what would have happened if we didn't take the measures that we took? And that's, and that's going to be, and what would have happened if we didn't develop this vaccine? And, we can't say, well, we don't know, because maybe nothing would have happened, and then you guys would have felt pretty unintelligent.
Well, there's no question. I mean, we see what's happened.
We can kind of move from that to start talking about 5G really easily,
which is the intention of this, and really why I think many people wanted to come to listen, because there are a lot of people talking about 5G, and I'm going to have a video here below, and I'm sure you've seen it, with Tom Cowan, who did an excellent video. It was widely circulated, and I love Tom. I've interviewed him many times. He's a friend, and appreciate his compiling that, but that generated a lot of interest in this connection between 5G and this infection.
Yeah, I actually tested Tom's house, and I met him and his wife in the Bay Area there. They're very nice. He's very top-notch doctor. He's on the cutting edge. And so, yeah, in that video, he talks about Wuhan as, one of the testing grounds for 5G, where 5G was first implemented in China, widespread. And what's interesting about Italy, which is the country that everyone's talking about now after China, Italy was the focus, and it still is the focus for many people in this discussion, is that Milan, where it's in the Lombardy area of Italy, that's where 2/3 of the cases are in Italy. And that is considered the 5G capital of the European Union, according to Vodafone, which is the big 5G carrier out there. And on top of that, you have all of the older population in Italy, and people that are likely, fully buying into the Western medicine, and they're on 10 to 12 medications, those sorts of things. And the way that all of those medications are interacting, combined with the 5G stress and the electromagnetic stress, I think it's no wonder everyone's immune system is suppressed and they're so susceptible. It's the terrain that's the problem, the environmental stress. And this is a 5G area already on its own before 5G was implemented anywhere.
Okay.
In my opinion. It maxes out all of our meters wherever we go. There are hidden antennas everywhere in New York City.
And you've been there a number of times measuring.
Yeah.